T-minus 90 minutes until curtains up on the first Press Presents event. Really excited. We've got all of our speakers backstage in the green room.
All of us speakers are going to be talking about how to motivate yourself, how to have better work life, how to have better life-work balance.
I'm a little bit nervous to be hosting the evening. Hope I don't mess it up. Okay, see you on the other side.
Okay, so last but very much not least. So Julie Montagu is a renowned yoga guru, best-selling author, TV star, and food blogger, an all-round awesome human being. She's a mum of 4 and manages to exhibit the press mantra of living a life in balance, I think, incredibly well. So thank you so much for speaking and being with us here today. If you come up and give her a round of applause.
My story does really start with my husband and my 4 kids. People ask me all the time, how did you get into yoga? How did you get into healthy eating? And with everything in life, it usually comes from quite a harrowing life experience. And for me, it's really what happened to my husband. So about 10 years ago, my husband was cold turkeyed off of pharmaceutical drugs, so an anti-anxiety and a sleeping pill. He was put on both of these drugs after having gone into a sinus operation. That's it, a sinus operation, and came out feeling very weird. He kept going back to his GP here in this country, so this was 25 years ago, and the GP said, no, you know what? You probably have a chemical imbalance. I can't make this stuff up, and it's all in the notes. And he said to him 25 years ago, America has this great drug that they've just come out with called Prozac. I'm on it. You should try it. I feel great. And 25 years ago, my husband, before the internet was really, nobody knew anything about Prozac and the side effects, my husband said, okay, well, I guess I'll take it. And he took it, and he did feel better. And he felt better for a while until all of a sudden he started becoming obviously involuntarily dependent on it. So before you know it, he was on a concoction of drugs that he shouldn't have ever been on because he had simply a sinus operation. And so our hell really began 10 years ago when really the internet started to give more and more answers about the misprescribing of pharmaceutical drugs and definitely the side effects of pharmaceutical drugs and how harrowing they can be, and how pharmaceutical drugs, believe it or not, many of them, benzodiazepines in particular, are harder to come off of than heroin. But before we knew any of this information, we went to the doctor, and the doctor said, great, I'm going to take you off, cold turkey you off them, stick you on a barbiturate for 3 days, and you're going to be totally fine. And that is just completely opposite of what happened to my husband. In those 3 days, our entire world turned around. I had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and I went to go pick up my husband from hospital, and it was like he had a lobotomy. My husband could barely string a sentence together. He could definitely not put my 4-year-old or my 7 or my 9-year-old, any of their math problems together. He had short-term and long-term memory loss. He had spasms throughout his body, basically nerve pain damage similar to fibromyalgia, agoraphobia, couldn't even go out in public, and tinnitus that was just like the worst of the worst, and blurred vision, couldn't drive a car. So we spent pretty much, I would say, the next 3 years in absolute pure hell. I think when you go into times like that, your adrenaline kicks in. I had 4 little kids to look after, and I just didn't even think twice about it. I just thought I have to keep going because I have 4 kids. Of course, there were many times I wanted to lay under the duvet with my husband and cry my eyes out. But I saved that for my red Mini, which I'm very attached to, but recently had to get rid of. And my husband would find me in my car crying my eyes out most Christmases because it's very difficult sometimes to always put on a brave face in front of your 4 children when your husband is in so much pain. But during those 3 years, what happened to me is I lost my sense of who I was. So I became a caretaker to my husband, and obviously I had to, and I love to do it, but a caretaker to my kids. And I did nothing for myself, not a single thing. It's so wrong. It starts with you. It starts with me. And that is when I found yoga. And somebody brought me to a class and they said, go to this yoga. Just come to this yoga with me. And it was a vinyasa flow yoga class, and it was hard, and I was sweating, and it was really physically challenging. And I remember getting to that shavasana, and I remember lying in shavasana with my eyes open because I was like, that's weird. People are closing their eyes here. That is weird. Which now, of course, I realize how amazing it is. But I just remember crying, and I just remember crying and crying and crying. But crying not because I was so angry about how my life had turned out so far, but I was crying because I felt good. And I just remember walking away from that yoga class thinking, oh my God, I actually feel good. I actually feel like I can walk into my house and be like, hi, and actually mean it, right? Like, and give the love that I wanted to give that was genuine and authentic. And that's when I decided I wanted to become a yoga instructor, because I never want anybody to feel as bad about themselves as I felt about myself before. And that's exactly why I teach yoga. In fact, it's the only reason I teach yoga. I mean, you cannot not go to a yoga class without somebody talking about, what they've brought for lunch or what they ate for lunch. And remember, this is like 10 years ago. So this is when I would arrive and it'd be like, you guys, I made quinoa today. And they were like, oh my God, I've heard about quinoa. And then, of course, like a year later, we were like, it's quinoa. And it was before Kale had a publicist, right? Remember Kale? Anybody knew about Kale 10 years ago? No. And you're like, oh my God. Now we have sweatshirts with Kale everywhere. And then it was chia seeds, and I remember like putting my students in Utkatasana, which is chair pose, and I was like, squeeze your knees together. Pretend like you have a chia seed in between your knees. And people were like, what is a chia seed? And so I really started to get into sort of the whole healthy sort of movement, if you like, 10 years ago, because I wanted to, I don't know if I necessarily really thought I could heal my husband, but I knew it couldn't hurt him. Fast forward 10 years on, and if you were to ask my husband, like, would you change what happened to us or to you? And the answer is absolutely not. So we would not even change the hell that we went through, because there's been so many silver linings. And for me, it was about learning how to take care of myself. And the brilliant Lucy really touched on this. And I have 10 tips, and my 11th one is going to be masturbation. So I'm going to have to add it to my next speech. But it was all about putting together a self-care plan for me. So this is just about spending 10 minutes a day. Listen, I did not have a lot of time. I had 4 kids and a sick husband in it. And then I was teaching yoga, and then I was learning about nutrition. There was not a lot of time, but I was like, I have to spend 10 minutes a day on myself or else I'm gonna go crazy. So then I was better able to take care of my kids, to take care of my husband. I became a better mother, a better wife, and definitely a better friend. So these are just my top 10 tips. And one of them is waking up 30 minutes earlier. And during those 30 minutes, you can do a whole host of things. You can listen to there's so many different amazing apps out there, like Headspace and a Yoga Nidra app. So you can do your meditation, you can do a 30 minutes yoga lesson, but you guys know what it is you want to do. Do you want to write it in a journal? Do you want to just make a beautiful cup of tea? Do you want to have a bath first thing in the morning? But my advice is to start your day on the right foot and get up earlier. Secondly is to unplug. Make sure that you have something throughout your day, one time at least, that you're like, okay, it's lunchtime, I get rid of my phone and my computer. It's dinner time, I get rid of it. Thirdly, if you work in an office, whether it's at home or whether it is in an office building, close your door, right? You don't need to that's a lot of external distraction. It's like going into Shavasana with your eyes open. You don't really get the full benefits. When you close the door and silence everybody, you become more silent on the inside. Talking about eating, I always say, eat outside as much as you can. Listen, it's never really nice here. I know that. I'm American, okay? I've gotten used to the gray weathers. But it's tempting to work through your lunch hour and to eat lunch at your desk. Just get into the habit of taking a proper lunch break, right? And walking and getting outside and getting the fresh air. It gets the endorphins up. You're taking care of yourself. And then 5th is obviously just scheduling time with yourself is just as important as scheduling time. For me, I was scheduling time with everybody else, with my 4 kids, with my husband, with my in-laws, making sure everybody was okay, but I wasn't taking care of me. So one of the things I do every Sunday night is I go into my app, Mind Body app, and I schedule all my yoga lessons every single day. I know exactly what I'm doing this week. I know exactly what classes I'm going to. And it's in the diary. It's in my scheduler. So whatever it is, if it's boxing, schedule that in. Okay, 6, it's important that you're always aware that you should never feel guilty. So it's what Lucy was talking about beforehand. Don't guilt yourself out of it. I used to be there. And the more you guilt yourself and shame yourself about it, the more miserable you're going to. Why do you want to feel even more miserable? We want to start feeling good about ourselves. So stop guilting yourself. Selfish, you're not being selfish by taking care of yourself, right? It's just not a selfish act, period. And no one would ever say it is. And then when you feel as though you're obliged to do something, try to rephrase it in a different way. So the reason I put this up there is because I would go through these so many days of being like, oh my God, I got to take my kids to school. Oh my God, I got to go back home and deal with the mess at home. Oh my God. Like everything for me was just an, oh my God, this sucks moment. Every single thing. And I learned to rephrase it. I didn't necessarily have a choice. I had to go cook dinner for my 4 kids. I had to do their homework, but instead I would spin it like, okay, I'm gonna go home and cook a really healthy, nutritious, delicious meal for my 4 kids so that they can be energized and they can learn about the benefits of food. And then when you're considering how to spend your leisure time, try to invest in things that give you real life experiences as opposed to things that are just material goods. So obviously, you know, we can go out there and we can buy ourselves a new dress and we feel good about that. But what are really, I like to look at them as like services. Can you book yourself into Kathy's boxing classes? Can you take a yoga class? Can you take an art class? Look beyond the materialistic things. And if you need to spend money for it, maybe you're spending it on services. Maybe it's volunteering. And then obviously 9. So when people say like you have to have 8 hours of sleep, you don't have to have 8 hours of sleep. You have to, you know what sleep is good for you. But what I will say about that is making sure that before you go to bed at night, you have a ritual. So every night, without fail, unless I'm in a hotel room that doesn't have a bath, but I usually request to have a bath, is I have an Epsom salt bath that's surrounded by candles. It's almost, I'd say 99.9% of the time, I do that every single night before I go to bed. You may think of these things as little sort of like, yeah, I could do that. They are like play a huge part in your energy levels and in really your self-love just by taking some time out for you, being grateful for what you have in your life, having that Epsom salt bath. And then obviously, I find it really helps to promote self-care. If you think of caring for yourself as you would for caring for somebody else. And that's really where I found, and Lucy's touched on this as well, is that the way I was taking care of my 4 kids and the way I was taking care of my husband was totally different to how I was taking care of myself. But once I started taking care of myself, I stopped resenting my husband. I stopped resenting my kids. And it turned into this pure joy, love. And I looked at them and I thought, how lucky my husband is to be alive. How lucky I have these 4 little kids that I get to raise. And when you turn things around and you start to rewire the brain by taking care of yourself and only putting in positive thoughts, only putting in self-care moments, it's amazing how all of a sudden you feel so much better about yourself that every day you wake up and you're like, okay, today, I know is going to be a great day because I booked in a yoga class, because I'm going to close my office door and I'm just going to breathe for 10 minutes, or I'm going to take that walk. And it's those little things that you can implement in your life. After you leave this room tonight, look at your calendar over the next 28 days and figure out what you can do every single day to implement those small moments, those 10 minutes of self-care into your daily life. Do it for 28 days, and I promise you after the 28 days, it becomes habit, it becomes instinctual, and you will, again, what you're putting out to the universe will come back to you. But thank you guys for tonight. Any questions, let me know. And thank you to all the speakers in the ad.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Mind, for choosing us to partner with. Thank you, all of the speakers. They've given up huge amounts of their time to come here. They are all extremely busy people. So if you can give them all a massive round of applause. And thank you all for being here this evening.